former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe, former newspaper editor Emily Sheffield, and columnist and the chief data reporter for the Financial Times, John Burr-Murdoch. So, John, let me start with you, because we need someone with your pedigree, chief data reporter of the FT. Number crunch this in language we can understand. In all your time covering economic matters, have you ever seen such a cack-handed display of economic incompetence by government?
It's pretty astonishing, isn't it? I think the key thing here is that it wasn't just that this was a big move, it was a completely unforced move. You know, a lot of people asked last week why have the markets responded to this, that most of the sort of fiscal weight of what was announced in the mini-budget was stuff that had been leaked before. The bulk of it was the energy bill, the energy price guarantee. But the key point is that was sensible. That was something that any government, any economist, any member of the public looks at and says, OK, I can see why that was done. We needed that. It costed a lot of money, but it was necessary. You look at something like cutting the top tax rate or getting rid of the cap on bankers' bonuses, and sure, while the numeric amounts in terms of the additional borrowing was, or the additional sort of fiscal costs were smaller, it's what it signalled. And I think it just signalled that this is a government, a leadership that has completely abandoned economic orthodoxy and completely unmoored itself from where the British population is on these issues at a time when economic issues, the cost of living, were at the forefront of everyone's minds.
I mean, you're shaking your head, Anne. I'll come to you while you're doing that in a moment. But it just seemed to me that the optics of the whole mini-budget were completely skewed. It just looked like they were trying to reduce taxation on wealthy people. It looked like they were trying to spare bankers and take away all their bonus caps, that they weren't going to punish energy companies with a windfall tax because they wanted them to flourish too. Meanwhile, you've got all these millions of people really suffering in this cost of living crisis going, well, whose side are you on here?
Well, that is the PR failure, and it was a very, very big failure. And I think if Liz Truss failed to lay the ground at all, it was in the preparation for the reasoning for it. Now, if you just take the cap on bankers' bonuses, for example, the idea is that because all the EU does have a cap, if we didn't have a cap, we would be more competitive, we would attract investment. Now, that isn't something that happens 24 hours later, but it's something that does happen. And that was the reasoning behind it. It wasn't to give the rich a break, it was to actually...
No, but I'm talking about the optics of it.
Yes, OK, let me come to that.
You might be talking about a reality. I've seen people defend it. But when you put those three things together, the combined effect was we're looking after the wealthiest people in society.
First of all, that 150 billion that we've spent on the energy price cap to try and keep down bills for households, 150 billion, a mere 2 billion, if that, it was probably going to be cost neutral.
Yeah, but the impact... but hang on.
Hang on. You hang on. Which of us is going to hang on?
It's my show. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. The problem is, if you suddenly see mortgages and rising, pensions crashing and so on, then the damage that is done by this mini-budget far outdoes any of the benefits you're talking about. This is what we saw happen, hence the screeching U-turn.
Right, first of all, you were hysterical last week about the pound. The pound has now gone back. And as far as pensions go, there was also a bit of risky trading that was going on anyway, so it wasn't just the budget. But those things people don't take in. What really flabbergasts me is that after all that talk, that tough talk, the talk about being Churchill, if you like, they've actually turned into the Grand Old Duke of York.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's the interesting thing.
The Grand Old Duke of York.
Right. So, Emily, I mean, the problem for Liz Truss is she was going to be the new Thatcher. She wouldn't be for turning. She would take the difficult decisions and stick by them. And in the space of literally 10 days, she's performed a massive U-turn, humiliating U-turn. She's proved she is for turning, and she ain't no Margaret Thatcher.
And it's about a fiddling little thing like the 2 billion.
Well, it's maybe fiddling to you, Anne. It's not fiddling to a lot of people.
I don't think it is. She looks utterly incompetent. So does her Chancellor, because this was 3 weeks in. She's literally like someone sort of running into a party to announce themselves and in their brand new frock. And everyone thinks, OK, we'll just have a look at this girl. And literally falling flat on her face. Yeah. I think she has completely lost credibility financially. I think they can survive, but you've got to think the U-turn, everyone's focusing on the tax cut U-turn today. They didn't just U-turn on the tax cut. They had to praise to high heaven our British institutions, the Bank of England. I think they're going to have to bring forward that OBR report. They can't leave that till the 23rd of November. And they spent the summer slagging off the civil service and Treasury orthodoxy. They look so stupid, reckless.
Well, the OBR report is actually being brought forward.
It's now being...
Just on that point.
Their credibility is gone.
Either way...
The credibility is gone.
Whether you take Emily and my view, which is this has been a total disaster and therefore damaging, or your view, which is they've shown political weakness, which is also very damaging, either way, they're very damaged.
Yes, that is undeniably true. I mean, they
and
are...
the polls are catastrophic. I mean, today, another poll just coming out, Redfield and Wilton strategies, a 28-point lead for Keir Starmer.
It was 35 last week.
You think they're getting better, do you?
But you said, do you think she can survive? The problem is, and you're about to have the IEA director on, I think, because even he said this morning, having said on Radio 4, I've never seen her change her mind. Well, I mean, she has. Through her career, she's often changed her mind about a lot of things. But, and I don't mind flexibility in politicians, actually, her bigger problem now is her position in the party is so weakened. This isn't going to be the only thing she U-turns on. We're going to see her U-turn on so many difficult issues.
Well, they got her on the run.
She's weakened.
This is the thing, isn't it, John?
We've now got an incredibly weak...
Right, when you've got people like, Michael Gove and Grant Shapps, all the ones who basically left the stage but are festering away about what's gone down, when you see them all taking her on and getting an immediate win, that, to me, is a real problem for an incumbent new Prime Minister, because the confidence from her own party seems to be less than it is in the wider community.
Absolutely.
I
just think it was astonishingly bad politics. I think the key thing in the polls is the Tories, obviously, a key thing for them in 2019 was winning over this chunk of former Labour voters. Those Labour voters are left-wing. If you come out and say we're going to cut taxes for the rich, you've immediately lost them. And you can see that in the polls now. About 1 in 5 people who voted Tory at the last election are now saying they're going to vote Labour.
Right.
I think it's the voters, it's the more moderate members of the party. I think that...
The Red Wall would have hated this mini-budget.
Absolutely. It gets almost...
And why do we call it a mini-budget? It's bigger than most budgets I've ever seen.
Even he said today, he called it a budget.
Yeah.
I think the other interesting thing is...
But his body language... I mean, there was a moment here in his speech today to the Tories where he sort of almost looks like he's enjoying himself. Watch this.
But I can be frank. I know the plan put forward only 10 days ago has caused a little turbulence. I get it. We are listening and have listened. And now I want to focus on delivering...
A little turbulence, chuckle from the party faithful. Are they still not getting this? Do they not realise the damage they've done to the British public?
Mortgage rates. I mean, again, a little turbulence, and you've got people who are trying to buy a house now or trying to refix their mortgage, and they're screwed. Like you mentioned this earlier, the amount of money we were talking about households losing as a result of the entire cost of living crisis pales in comparison to what people who are refixing their mortgage will hit now.
Right.
This is people's real lives.
Interest rates were going up. Those mortgage packages will return. So, about 300 removed. You could still get a mortgage for about, I think it was about 3 to 4%. So those interest rates are going up. The catastrophic thing for the Truss government now is they are going to own that. And interest rates were going up, and the Bank of England would have carried on.
I mean, I watched Kwasi Kwarteng.
The Chancellor's piled so much on
the Chancellor's
themselves.
job is to be calm, stable, and make us all feel reassured. I watched a guy today.
The job is to fire up the economy. And that was what they were trying to do by going for growth.
I'm all for that.
That's what they were trying to do.
But they've achieved the complete opposite.
Well, I don't think they've necessarily achieved the complete opposite, because what they have...
What's grown, apart from the...
Oh, don't be silly.
Apart from individual household debts, what's grown?
As if something grows within a few days of a budget. I mean, you grow up. But what I'm trying to say...
Individual personal debts in households, because they can't afford to exist under this government.
And as we've already heard, there was a trend that was happening anyway, and you didn't hear that from a friend of the government just now. So, but let me say that, I mean, I despise the U-turn. But what they were trying to do, and by sacrificing the 45p, actually they have sacrificed what you could have described as a distraction. But by what they were trying to do was to stimulate growth. And it is crucial that they do that. And they've been saying for months and months that, they were going to be a tax-cutting government.
Yes, it's all very well
through the leadership
campaign. It's like saying...
And then they tried to deliver that.
It's like saying it's going to be sunny for months and then it pours a rain.
No, but they were borrowing money. They were borrowing money for tax cuts. That doesn't work.
And we still don't know how they were going to fund any of this.
If you drive growth, that doesn't actually matter too much.
They've driven us over a cliff, haven't driven any growth.